Hey, what's up? Dion here. And if you're watching this video, it's because we're going to start coaching soon, and that's really awesome. It also means you've watched through all of the basic forecasting videos, and you have a general sense of how you're going to do that. You have your surf folder, you have your surf journal ready to go, and we're going to learn some surfing. We're going to get better at surfing. Regardless of whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, this little video should be shorter than the rest of them, is how to schedule with sessions with me in the New York area. Obviously, trips are completely different, so we're not going to go over that here. All right. Due to the fact that conditions are only predictable with some measure of certainty a few days out, I cannot schedule surf sessions more than 4 to 5 days in advance. I know it's annoying, but if the surf is flat or too big or whatever, we have to reschedule, and that's also annoying. So pick your what annoying. We're dealing with the ocean and fickle weather patterns, and I think that this is a perfectly acceptable way to do scheduling, and you're going to get in the water if you're paying attention to those surf forecasts. Plus, if you're relying on me to tell you when I think the surf will be good for your level, you're not growing in your relationship to the ocean to your fullest potential. Furthermore, you're not setting down the foundations of a sustainable surfing practice for the future if you're relying on me for the surf reports. The key to better surfing is reps, whether you're getting reps with me in the water or on your own. I also have an expanded definition of reps that we'll get into later. But in terms of reps in the ocean, the better your forecasting game, the more reps and conditions suitable to your level you're going to get in. This gives you the edge on people who follow the lemming forecasts on Surfline, although, they do sometimes line up. But for the most part, if a person is only looking at that Surfline social forecast, they're going to miss the good days in between. These kinds of people organize their time around the days that are good to epic and miss out on the really good to epic days in between, like I said. Besides, what Surfline actually means by good to epic in general is 6 to 10 foot throttling tubes with offshore winds. They're still using an expert surfer's ideal to set their scale. Now, if you're watching this and you are an advanced surfer, we might be able to go out in those kind of conditions together, or we can hire a filmer to film us both surfing in those conditions. But generally, most people are going to be using a different scale than Surfline's quote-unquote good to epic. There's also cases where they're forecasting it good to epic for advanced surfers, and they're not really digging into the fine-tuned details of their own forecast, and the wind can be off, the day before can be better. All kinds of things can go wrong if you're only looking at Surfline. And if you're training with me, you're not only looking at Surfline, even though you're also looking at Surfline. We've gone through the training. All right. I prefer to coach. So what are you looking for when you're going to schedule a day with me, when you're going to request the day to get on the schedule to get in the water with me? I prefer to coach all levels in small to medium surf. For New York surfers, this is buoys 1 to 5 feet at 6 to 12 seconds. By that, I mean almost any combination they're in. Per the module on buoys, 1 foot at 6 seconds is flat or near to flat, but 1 foot at 10 seconds might be okay. That longer interval signifies that the swell has a little more oomph in it. It's traveled longer, even though it has a small wave height. It might be okay if the sand and tide are right. Okay, so 1 foot is still pretty small. 5 feet at 6 seconds is infinitely smaller and weaker than 4 feet at 10 seconds. Again, the interval, so even though the wave height is higher, the 6 seconds is showing that it's a weaker swell. Often it can be the case that a 4 foot at 10 second swell shows up much bigger than a 5 foot at 6 seconds. So you always have to keep the wave height and the interval correlation in mind. The reason I like to coach all levels in small to medium surf is because you can build a really solid foundation of takeoffs and turns in these size conditions. I always say that if you consider yourself an intermediate and you can't do a roundhouse cutback, a full wrapping roundhouse cutback on a 3 foot wave riding an 8 foot board, then in a lot of ways you're still a beginner, and we can get serious work done in the small conditions. So I want to see complete surfing in medium sized waves. Floaters, hitting the lip, nice takeoffs, all kinds of different takeoffs, hitting your variety of your repertoire of your pop-ups in those smaller conditions. You also build the confidence in those conditions that you can translate to the larger surf later on in your practice. I do understand that sometimes larger waves are easier because they have more speed, but all the more reason to get good at the hard and easy parts of the smaller waves. What else do you need to look for? I prefer not to coach in high winds. High winds is anything pushing 20 miles per hour. So like we're looking at like 25, 30 miles an hour. It's iffy. You want to check in about that. It's dangerous to coach in high winds. It's also really cold. Even when it's warm, it's cold. And if those high winds are onshore, it can be extremely sloppy. This doesn't mean that you should not come to the beach or check out what the high winds look like. It's always good if you're not sure to get a real empirical grasp on that. But do note that high winds are not usually great for a productive surf session. Not usually. There are always outlying cases in surfing, so you do want to check in. Don't write it off all the way. Just check in about high winds. They're not ideal most of the time, but there are always outlier cases. In larger surf, I only coach on a case-by-case basis. For the most part, I enjoy doing my own surfing. I have my own surfing practice in larger conditions, so 6 to 10 foot waves. But some people are advanced enough that surfing with me on days like this will push their level, and it will be useful for them to sit with me and get position with me and just feel comfortable in the lineup with me. I, however, don't want to be a lifeguard. So if the conditions look like they are going to hurt you or you're going to be so scared that I have to spend my time worrying about your life, it's not going to be good coaching conditions. But it doesn't mean that you, again, don't ask. If you're not sure, just ask. Don't write it off that, oh, the buoys are 6 feet at 10 seconds. Dion doesn't want to coach me. Just ask. You don't know if you don't ask. Case-by-case basis, gotta ask. Also, on super long interval swells, like 14 seconds and greater, I will often run trips to places like Rhode Island to score smaller, cleaner waves that are on offer in New York. And that's for reasons to do with the coastal contours and bathymetry, which you remember, Rhode Island has point breaks that will bend those longer lines. So if you are interested in those, you see those intervals go up. There's going to be a lot of closeouts at the beach breaks in New Jersey and New York. You might think in your head, Dion might be going to Rhode Island. Ask, or hopefully you are a weekly or a monthly member in the newsletters and you'll find out about those trips in there. All that being the case, to schedule a surf session, first do all the diligence of checking the forecast, like I said and reiterated. Then you text me. That's my number. There are other ways to get my number. It's here in this document if you want it, to request a day and a time slot. I will know whether you've been checking the forecast based upon the days and the times that you request. If you've only surfed 4 times and you request a day that is forecasted to be 6 to 8 feet with hard offshore winds, I'll ask you to please consult the forecast again. I'll ask nicely and gently, but I'll just want you to look at those numbers again. For borderline days, borderline flat, or borderline too big, or borderline too windy, just ask, like I said. And here are some examples of what a text exchange looks like. It's Monday, and Bob says, hey, Dion, Wednesday looks like it could be either flat or fun. Can you put me on the list? And if the buoys are good at 5 a.m., we do a session. And I say, sure thing, Bob. You're on my list. Hey, let's just do a text on Tuesday night because we may know by then. If the buoys are good Tuesday night, it looks like it's a go. Here's another. It's Wednesday, and Sally texts, hey, Dion, Saturday looks like it could be medium or too big. Do you think I can handle it? To which I reply, hey, Sally, thanks for texting. I'm not too sure about that system right now. If the models hold, it may be quite big, in which case Sunday when it drops might be better. Do you want to be on the list both days and we firm up as the forecast solidifies? If it's smaller than predicted, you can totally handle it. If bigger, it might be tough. Just let me know any schedule constraints you might have. Sally responds, that's perfect. I have to be somewhere Sunday at 2 p.m., but that's my only constraint. We'll text you again on Friday to see how it's looking. And then I respond, perfect, text Friday. That's basically how it goes. So yes, I have a list for every possible surf day in a given week. If you're a weekly subscriber, we do the forecasting calls Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday somewhere. It's rolling week to week, but there's one forecasting call a week. You request a day and a time slot, and you get put on my list. I know who has had more sessions and who has had fewer, who needs one-on-one, who can handle 2-to-1 in terms of instructor-student ratio. You can ask questions about that, but in general, people who need one-on-one are people who I don't feel are safe in the water with other people yet. Or for whatever reason, they're just lucky and nobody else wants to surf that day. They've read the surf forecast really well, and you get to have one-on-one. It happens actually all the time. It's actually conditions that usually force us into the semi-private settings, and I want to reiterate, I will only put people in a semi-private setting when I have verified that you're not a danger to self and others. And that means radical board control. You want to be really good at controlling your board. We usually knock that out within your first 3 sessions. What I can never know are your particular schedule constraints, so you have to make sure that's on you to let me know what those are. That way I can find the time slot that works with your schedule constraints. Once your daytime is set, we'll text first thing in the morning. In Rockaway, I normally coach between 59th and 67th Streets. But in certain cases, I will change location. If the sandbars are bad or I want to change up, I may go to Long Beach. If the winds are west and the swell is east, New Jersey, usually the Belmar Spring Lake area. If I find a particularly great sandbar has formed somewhere else in New York, I'll let you know via text. I'm always on the hunt for those better sandbars. I'll also let you know whether or not you're my first session or second of the day. The difference is that the first sessioners should check the surf with me in their clothing. We want to talk about how the conditions are manifesting and make our game plan before we put our wetsuits on. If you are my second or third session, you'll have to arrive early enough to check the surf on your own. I have a whole spiel about making the conditions make sense to you on the surf check. That way we make the strategy, and you can go out not so blindly. You want to go out with the strategy. That's part of the S.U.R.F. Conatus S.U.R.F method. Strategy number 1. You'll get a text from me a few hours earlier if you're the second or third, confirming the location, whether I'll meet you on the beach to do strategy or whether I've left the board for you to paddle out on. I'm usually good about texting pics of the board's location or anything that could be confusing. Then we surf, or I film on the beach. Whether I'm filming or surfing will depend on what I program for your progress. At that point, you will know in advance, or we will decide on a strategy. I always provide boards if you don't have one. If you do have one, bring yours. I like to see what you're working with. If we're already advancing in the package, advancing in your sessions, I might have you ride different boards of mine just to see how you're reacting to the different length of surfboard. Wetsuits are not provided. You have to pee in your own wetsuits. I have a pretty good blog post on this that you can find by searching my blog. Sessions are 45 to 90 minutes depending on a variety of factors. We need to build in this big wiggle room with the ocean just because she changes on us constantly. I can get a lot of work done in 45 minutes, can tune up your paddling, can help you get into a few waves. A lot of times it's just finding those 1 or 2 tips that's going to send you forward in your surfing exponentially. You will need to budget 3 to 6 hours out of your entire day to complete a session, however. I'm including in this rough estimate commute to the beach, changing in out of your wetsuit, surfing, rinsing your wetsuit, commuting back to wherever you need to be. So just think of it, surfing takes a lot of time. All right, I coach all of the year if I'm in town in New York area. Summers, I prefer the hours between 5 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. before the lifeguarding regulations and the insane summer crowds. I can be flexible, especially if the waves are good. It's just a general principle. I'm looking for the earlier hours in the summer, but not wedded to them. Again, just ask. For every session completed, you'll receive a session notes PDF marking your wins, goals, and directives. Expect 24 to 36 hours turnaround on your session notes PDF and link to your Dropbox files if I filmed. For retreats, turnaround could be longer since it's so much footage. Okay, so don't bug me for photos. I will get the stuff to you. I really will. And I aim to get a quick turnaround, but I just aim. If you have a little patience, it usually comes a little bit faster. All right, so that is how you schedule sessions with me. If you have questions, you can text them to me. You can set up a call. And I look forward to going surfing with you. If you're not already a member on Subkit, get over there. Subkit, no, they changed the URL. The URL is now https://dion.subkit.com. And that's it. Yeah, psyched. Let's go surfing.